So, you're at the end of the game, you complete the last level, defeat the final boss, and now there's nothing left to do but sit back and watch the end credits. The game is done. Or is it? Sometimes developers find a way to sneak a bit more gameplay into their video game. Movies and television series may dress up their end credits, but experiencing the credits is ultimately a passive experience as they get shown to the viewer. However, video games have the unique strength of being an interactive medium, meaning some developers can get creative and implement gameplay into their credit sequences. But what is an interactive credit sequence? That's a stupid question, it's pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, why would you even ask that? These credit sequences are accompanied by a minigame or some form of user input to spice up otherwise boring scrolling of names and the roles that they played. For example, in Astrobot, after defeating the final boss, you'll get to complete one more bonus level while you walk past the names of the development staff. The level is clearly bonus content, not being anywhere near as difficult as the main late game levels. But that's not the point. It's clearly meant to be a cherry on top of the experience of completing the game. One last victory lap as you jump between platforms and use power-ups that you got to play with throughout the game, including one that isn't even from this game, but instead from Astro's Playroom. It's a wink and a nudge to returning players and a celebration of the game and everything you've done up to this point. Interactive credits don't have to serve this purpose alone though. Dave the Diver has an interactive credit sequence that is pretty divorced from the rest of the game. It borrows some of the deep sea fishing gameplay, but repurposes it to have you in space shooting aliens and floating names as they explode into cartoon versions of the development staff. This is totally fitting for Dave the Diver though, which throws new gameplay sequences and mechanics at you constantly throughout the runtime. But why have an interactive credit sequence in a game? It's an odd thing to include. Even a simple minigame to be implemented well requires development time, quality testing, and debugging. Why spend that time on something that is ultimately superficial? It's basically never advertised as a feature of a game, it's not a selling point, they're never long enough to meaningfully pad the runtime. What benefit do they hold? The simplest answer is that it's just fun. It's a video game after all, why shouldn't the credits also be a game? Additionally, it certainly improves player retention, increasing the number of people who get to the end of the credits. A lot of these people would otherwise choose not to sit through a credit sequence and simply press skip. However, by making them interactive, it does a good job of keeping you engaged and staying until the end. Nintendo does this a bunch in their games, whether it's inking over the screen to reveal names in Splatoon 2, or platforming in Super Mario Wonder as you try to run into as many names as possible. Many of their games feature an interactive credit sequence. They're fun, oftentimes memorable ways to cap off the game experience. After all, as Reggie would say,
if it's not fun, why bother?
These credit sequences, while fun, can also serve a deeper purpose. In Nier Automata, the credit sequence for Ending E is an arcade shooter akin to something like Asteroids, where you fly around and shoot coloured circles as well as the names of the development team. Narratively though, there's a weight to these credits. I won't go into detail for the sake of spoilers, both for your sake as well as mine since the game is still on my backlog, but the emotional impact they serve makes them one of the most memorable credit sequences in gaming. Where did the interactive credit sequence come from though? For most game mechanics and features, a simple Google search can reveal where it started. First jump in a game? That's from Donkey Kong in 1979. First FPS? Maze War 1973. First interactive credit sequence? Very little information. Let's see how far back we can go and list some examples. Also, I just researched a lot about interactive credits and I don't want that to go to waste, so that's also why I'm doing this whole song and dance of naming examples and not just getting to the point. 2015's Undertale had a credit sequence after the true pacifist ending, which acted as a bullet hell minigame for the player. Similar to much of the combat in the game, you control a small red heart that tries to avoid moving projectiles. However, now instead of the small box, you have the whole screen to work with, and the projectiles are names of the Kickstarter backers for the project. Coming in contact with a name doesn't do any damage to the player or anything, it simply highlights the name in yellow, similar to how Super Mario Wonder did it. However, the goal here is to avoid the names if you can. If you manage to dodge the entire credit sequence, a secret door unlocks as an Easter egg for the player, rewarding their work. Rewarding the player for exhibiting skill in the credits is a common theme among many of these sequences. This is shown as well in 2009's New Super Mario Bros. Wii, featuring this interactive credit sequence with the developer's name scrolling up, spelled out in breakable blocks. Mario can then move and jump around the screen, breaking blocks and collecting coins. The number of coins you collect determines your score, and high scores are saved, incentivizing you to try again and do better. 2004's Katamari Damacy has the player take on the role as the prince, rolling around the magical adhesive Katamari ball as it collects items growing in size, which then allows you to collect larger and larger items. The game continues this trend by having the credits play over a bonus level at the end of the game, where you roll around picking up the countries of the world. This style of interactive credits is very common and can be seen in a bunch of other games, such as the Devil May Cry series or Bayonetta. In these sequences, there is gameplay underneath the credit sequence, but the player does not directly interact with the credits themselves. However, 2001 Super Monkey Ball is in my mind one of the most memorable interactive credit sequences in gaming. After finishing the game, the player is thrown into a bonus level which is just one long stretch with rails on either side, and they must collect as many bananas as they can. As you travel forward, the names and roles of developers float into view above the stage and fall apart, piece by piece dropping onto the stage. These letters form obstacles that you must avoid, otherwise you will lose some of the bananas you collected. The Super Smash Bros. Series has always had interesting credit sequences. My personal favourite is in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS, where your character moves around the screen and you can attack the names as they float by. But this dates all the way back to the original. 1999 Super Smash Bros. Has the developer names float along the screen as you shoot them. Managing to hit a name displays information about their role in the box in the top right of the screen, gamifying the process of learning about the game developers and what they did. I was a child though when I played this, and I just liked the pretty colours and sounds. 1993's Zombie Ate My Neighbors. This game is a top-down action game that serves as a love letter to B-movie horror. You complete levels where you must defeat classic monsters and of course, save your neighbours. And at the end of the game, the credit sequence has you exploring the LucasArts office, interacting with members of staff and of course, defeating more monsters. Now, while finishing off this script, I thought that was the oldest game with an interactive credit sequence, and I was about ready to record and start editing the video. But then in my research, I found out about one other game that I think could be the oldest game to have an interactive credit sequence in it. Boogie Wings, aka The Great Ragtime Show. A horizontally scrolling arcade shooter, this game has the player flying a plane and shooting things, all very par for the course in this era. The thing that sets this thing apart though is this large hook hanging from the plane. Anything that comes in contact with the hook gets dragged along, and dragged objects can cause damage to anything they collide with. This is honestly such a cool mechanic, and I think it does a lot to set the game apart. Importantly, for my purposes though, it contains what I believe to be the first interactive credit sequence in a game. As the credits scroll past across the screen, the player continues to control their biplane as the sprites for every NPC, as well as every rideable vehicle in the game appear, providing gameplay while the credits roll. This is it, I think, the first interactive credit sequence. From there, the trail goes cold. I couldn't find any earlier games in my research. If you know of anything earlier, please don't hesitate, let me know in the comments, I really want to know. This aspect of game design is so poorly documented, and it hurts because I think interactive credit sequences are really something special. It's the one game feature that cannot be motivated by profit. An interactive credit sequence is purely there due to passion and a desire to make something typically boring a bit more interesting. You don't dress up credit sequences because you think it will ship more units. You do it because it's fun. Because it shows off your personality. It can serve as a celebration of the journey so far, as a way to challenge the player one last time, or as a way to hide even more secrets for die-hard fans to explore. Lastly, it serves as a thank you to you, the player, the one that makes the game possible. Thank you for experiencing a piece of art that was put into the world and hopefully enjoying it. Thank you from all these game developers, and from me, for watching this video and experiencing something that someone created. So, what's your favourite interactive credit sequence? There's so many that I wanted to mention, but unfortunately I can't talk about all of them. And if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.